There is a place where the sun doesn't hide in the winter, where the greens stay green and the crimson canyons still glow. There is a place where dimples determine destiny, and a tiny wooden tee holds the outcome in the balance. There is a place where we drive for show, putt for dough, and settle the score with another round. There is a place.
Oh, look, a redhead. Staring contest. You still got it. I know.
Come alive with the forest.
The dad was cute.
You were looking right at us.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
There is a place where the desert comes alive, where rain breaks forth from solid stone and gardens spring from blistered rock. There is a place with enough color to make a rainbow jealous, where boulders are bigger than buildings and cliffs are higher than clouds. There is a place that will straighten your step, tighten your grip, widen your eyes, and open your jaw. There is a place.
The Community Education Channel, serving Washington County for 20 years, covering DSU athletics, local high school events, city councils, the Economic Summit, Chamber of Commerce meetings, community events like Washington City Veterans Day celebration, and much more. Visit cectvutah.com for broadcast schedule and more information.
Welcome to Talking Point Live, coming to you live from the campus of Dixie State University. My name is Eric Young, and I'm here with my colleague,
Jennifer Kohler, and we teach in the communication department here at Dixie.
And I probably should also state that we're not paid to do this, okay? Just so everybody in the audience understands that and our position here.
Right. We do have the privilege, though, of sharing our own opinions and ideas on things that we think are important.
As long as we have that ability. And we've been talking about free speech from our show last week, where we got into the issues of what's happened in free speech on college campuses. And today's tease was arguably the easiest tease we've ever done.
That's right. We didn't, except for taking the tape off was, slightly painful.
You still got your makeup on.
Do I
Your
do?
lipstick is
I still
still
do.
looking okay
Yes.
that way. I didn't have to worry about that necessarily.
Nope.
But so what's the point you're trying to make?
Well, we're talking about a form, or one of the ideas related to free speech is political correctness. And the idea for me, taping my mouth, was, is political correctness causing me to censor myself or be censored unduly, and is it impinging on my free speech rights?
Has civil discourse gotten to the point where we really can't say anything at all? I think we have some differing opinions on this as Jen and I talk about this over the course of the show. So we're going to tackle first off the concept of the idea of political correctness and where that's gone to. And then we'll get into taking offense. What's offended? What's offending at this point? And then as that leads into this concept of trigger warnings, kind of bringing this full circle with last week's show.
Right, we're exploring a little bit of some of the ideas we talked about last week.
So political correctness, the whole concept, actually it goes back to the early 60s from my research.
Okay.
But really became more prominent, more so in the 80s, as really a method or a way to be able to have a civil discourse without going through and stepping on a whole lot of feelings at the same time, in a way of having some level of general manners or politeness while we're being engaged in some level of discourse or debate, as the case might be.
And didn't it have its origins in that time period in higher education, where there was a real push to have more diversity in programs and be more inclusive in the environment?
Yeah, I can't find a specific origin in that
Okay.
respect. I think it really stems from getting away from certain racial epithets or derogatory terms in labeling or stereotyping individuals, and getting into something that might have been more mainstream in referring to each other, as opposed to you.
Well, when I was reading about it on one of my favorite sources of all things accurate, Wikipedia, it does credit the use of the term to a couple of different writers with agendas and points to be made. So if you are curious about the history regarding political correctness in the United States, I thought that Wikipedia article was worth noting, and they had a lot of footnoted sources at the bottom that are worth exploring if you really want to delve into the topic.
So have we gotten to a point where PC has become the battle cry of the right these days? Meaning that we're to a point that if you're easily offended, something must be wrong with you?
Well, let's see. I'm thinking, how about if we talk about this in terms of April Lavril at Sonoma State?
April Lavril.
Yes.
She was one who was wearing a certain religious artifact around her neck.
Yeah, she was, I think we have an image of April, and she was working a couple years ago in June at Sonoma State at a freshman orientation.
Now, Sonoma State is in Northern California.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And her supervisor at the freshman orientation objected to the cross she was wearing. And I'm not sure if the image is the exact cross, but it was about 2 inches tall.
That's a big cross.
From the description. And her supervisor suggested that she hide the cross or take it off so as not to make any of the incoming freshmen feel uncomfortable or unwelcome on the campus. I believe she objected to that direction and then was told a second time she really needed to hide it or get rid of it. And I think shortly thereafter she did quit the orientation job she had there and subsequently objected to this attempt to censor her free speech with this article of clothing she was wearing.
Okay. Article of clothing, it's really an artifact that she has on that goes through and has some kind of declarative meaning behind that.
Yes.
If she were wearing a hijab, for example, would she have been told the same thing?
I wonder, yeah. I wonder, and you know, it's interesting that in France, I believe it's against the law to wear a headscarf in school.
Yeah, that's still being debated back
being
and forth.
debated, heavily debated, because it does strike, you know, our clothing and the jewelry and some of the insignia we wear are long understood as a form of self-expression.
So we have April's case come forward. This was a
Yeah.
couple years ago, as you said.
Right.
And I asked you the question before on this.
okay.
Is this just something that's relatively isolated? Is this the kind of behavior that we're seeing over and over and over again, especially in the context of higher education, where students feel squelched that they can't go through and properly or adequately express who they are, their orientation, their religious affiliation, whatever the case might be? Or was this in fact, was that crucifix just pretty darn big to begin with, and if it were just a little simple gold crucifix, that wouldn't have been an issue?
Yeah.
At what point does this become an issue to the point to where we're all up in arms about it, as opposed to if it were toned down? And I hate, here I'm trying to be politically correct and trying to explain the situation, right?
Right.
But if it were something smaller, not quite as encroaching, not maybe that wouldn't have been an issue to begin with.
Well, it's hard to know, but I think that's irrelevant, frankly. If she wants to be a little on the garish side or ostentatious in her jewelry choice,
Okay.
so be it. I see plenty of examples of.
So if she were
Yeah.
goth in that respect,
Right.
then wearing a crucifix that large would that have become an issue, or would that have been more maybe culturally accepted?
You know what I think is, I think the supervisor was well-meaning. I don't think she intended to deny April her free speech rights. I don't think she intended to, hopefully not to offend her. I think her supervisor really was concerned about making somebody else feel unwelcome and be offended. So I think the issue here is that political correctness is a form of civility, and it's a form of trying to be sensitive to the feelings of the people that we're interacting with. And I think it's basically well-intentioned, and I think sometimes people are maybe a little hasty or a little simplistic in their execution of it or their interpretation of it.
Okay. But the outcry seems to be the voices of the few, the very loud voice of the few, who go through and say, no, this goes against her
Yes.
rights to go through and express herself.
Well, I think it was a violation of her free speech rights, and apparently the university did when she complained about
right?
it. They offered several apologies on behalf of the institution, and then the supervisor was also asked to apologize to her.
Was that the save face, so to speak, or was it truly, you know what, we really messed up here and she should have been?
Yeah.
It's a no big deal. It's a no-brainer. This is the marketplace of ideas. This is a university. Sonoma State is a relatively progressive, conservative area of California where this is going on. So again, is this just a small thing that happens that's being blown up into huge proportions?
Right.
Much like what's going on with a certain county court clerk who was just released from jail.
Kim
yesterday.
Davis.
Kim
Well,
Davis.
here's, to answer your question or respond to it, first of all, I really can't tell whether the apology was sincere or not, right?
It's just a rhetorical question that way.
And the other thing is it an isolated incident that's being blown out of proportion? And I did find myself smiling a little bit when I read the account as reported by Fox News, because they used the term the apology as groveling on the part of the institution. So I tend to think that some news outlets might report this as of a bigger problem than it actually is.
Fox has made this a banner issue every Christmas, for that matter, when they go through and criticize certain school districts for not allowing a Christmas creche to appear on the school ground or within the office trophy case or whatever the case might be. And they go off on that ad infinitum without
but
regard
that's
of
their brand,
separation.
right? That's their brand.
That's their audience that they're going for.
This really bugged. This bug really likes me.
That gnat's getting more airtime
Go
than
over
you
there
are.
by him.
Nothing's going to come by me the way I feel. So the question is have we gone too far with this whole concept of PC, of political correctness? We're going to continue this discussion after this break. We're going to go away for 2 minutes. We're going to come back and talk about why is it that we've gotten to the point of being so easily offended. Stay with us. We'll be right back on Talking Point Live.
There is a place where rocks bleed and nature blushes on a battlefield green with envy, where dimples determine destiny and a tiny wooden teeth holds the outcome in the balance. There is a place where friends are opponents and opponents are friends, where the prize is elusive, the conquest is captivating, and the score isn't settled till the drinks are down. There is a place.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
People think I'm trash, but they're wrong. Today I'm just an aluminum can, but one day I could be a stadium.
There is a place where looking out means looking in, where an impression lasting only a few seconds will be imprinted on a life forever, where courage is forged and innocence rediscovered, where remembering is rewarding and forgetting unforgettable. There is a place where truth is felt and where seeing is believing. There is a place.
Everything's fine here on campus as the fire truck goes by behind us.
They're getting rid of that gnat.
They are. It's the gnat.
No more gnat patrol.
Pleased to come by. You're watching Talking Point Live. I'm Eric Young with my colleague here, Jennifer Kohler. We're talking about political correctness and this idea of being easily offended. When's the last time you were offended? You're still hanging out with me, so I
yes.
have to say you're probably not that easily offended.
I am not easily offended, and I do subscribe to the statement that taking offense is a choice a person makes, and that to take offense when no offense is intended is kind of silly.
There's something about a fool who takes offense.
Right, and then to take offense when it is offended, I just put it back on the person that's being offensive, and
Okay.
I figure it's their issue. I'm not interested in having that baggage on me and carrying that bitterness or frustration or anger around.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't get offended too easily.
About 13 years ago, I adopted.
Except this gnat
that
may be
being very offensive
yes.
to you. I adopted a 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, one of which is to not take anything personally, and that's really liberated me from being offended by much of anything, other than maybe crazy drivers or something that way.
Okay. Okay. And you know, crazy drivers, there's a perfect example. One of the things I love about my husband is he does not take offense on the road. He just is totally mellow and chill.
But there's
Yeah.
a sense of entitlement there, isn't there? Does that translate over to our being so easily offended that we feel maybe entitled to not be offended, to be in an offense-free environment?
Oh, you mean that we demand
Yeah.
this kind of environment where no one can irritate us or offend us in any way? Well, I don't know too many people who think that's how the world operates or should operate, but I do think there is a little sense of maybe my world is, I like to customize my world. I like to pick my own music, and maybe I like to pick what I hear, and maybe I like to pick only, to never be offended by something.
So I'm not going to find NWA on your playlist anywhere.
I don't even know what NWA is.
Yeah, I didn't think you would. I'll explain it to you after the show.
Right. Okay. Right, so I am thinking about a comment one of our administrators made the other day. We were talking about political correctness, and I was saying, I think people in leadership positions, government leadership positions, university leadership positions are under a lot of pressure. And I'm pretty sympathetic that they do not want to be seen as being tolerant of offensive behavior. And this administrator said to me, when it comes to some things, I just keep my mouth shut. Referring to the fact that he was loath to say anything that would be deemed politically incorrect.
In the event that could be interpreted as being politically incorrect.
Right. So there is a chilling effect. And
is that the issue, that we have so many pundits out there who are looking for the opportunity to interpret something as innocent as it may have been when spoken, can turn that into something that shows them in a negative light or disparages their point of what it is they're trying to do?
Right. Well, not to be too religious about it, but there is a scripture related to making a man an offender for a word and turning that in, I think, to an industry of sorts. And we've seen that, especially with social media. There was a recent example not too long ago, earlier this year, of a young woman named Justine Sacco who was flying home on a transatlantic flight.
She was going from New York, LaGuardia Airport, to Johannesburg, South Africa, with a layover in London.
Okay.
That's what she was doing.
Okay, or the other direction, possibly?
No, she was going to
Okay, she was going
to Johannesburg.
Okay. See, and here I thought she was coming home. Okay, well, anyway, she was traveling in a plane.
Don't take offense that I corrected you on that.
Yeah, that's right. No, we have that agreement.
Okay,
We
all right.
try not to let each other lie,
Okay.
especially on television. So anyway, she's traveling and she's tweeting to her few 163 followers.
Yeah. Not to correct you again, but she had 170 followers.
Okay, 170 followers. You're too much.
She starts off with a tweet in New York that's somewhat disparaging about New Yorkers. Then she gets into one.
Some German guy that needed deodorant.
A German guy that needed deodorant in first class. And then in London, she tweets again about the bad breath and bad food, so she must be in London. And before she gets onto the airplane, she
to go to South Africa.
To go to South Africa,
right.
She sends a tweet saying something about, I'm going to Africa. I hope I don't get AIDS. Oh, that's right, I'm white.
Yeah.
That was a tweet that went up, that hit the tweetosphere, so to speak.
Tweetosphere.
And 11 hours later, when she, going to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS, just kidding, I'm white. There's a tweet there by Justine Sacco. Now, some context on Justine. She's a pretty big mover and shaker when it comes to the social media world, in social media marketing, and worked for a large firm in New York City. And while she was up in the air, and not having any access at the time to social media, this tweet went around and brought some grand attention not only to her but to the firm for which she worked, only to find out by the time she landed, she had lost her job as a result of such a politically incorrect tweet that way going out. Pretty severe repercussion in that respect, but you never know how you're going to be interpreted. And social media seems to open up a channel for that, to where those who wish to be offended can be so easily anointed.
Yes,
in offense.
Yes, and one thing that was striking when I was listening to John Ronson, he did a TED Talk about Justine's ill-fated tweet, and also wrote an article for New York Times magazines. And John pointed out that she said what she said, jokingly and in poor taste, you know, according to several people. But then the people that responded to her, the vitriol and the extreme vilification of her character, why wasn't any of that called out as politically incorrect?
And she was
or
later doing an
inappropriate?
interview for that article. Her and the writer were in a restaurant, and the proprietor of the restaurant asked them to leave.
Yes.
Because of the fact that their Twitter feed was being lit up by the fact that Justine Sacco happened to be at this restaurant, and those who had any vitriol against her were going to go through and storm the restaurant or do whatever.
Oh yeah, yeah. Can you imagine that? So, you know, there is this phenomenon of amplification that occurs on social media.
But there's also a phenomenon within the media, as far as pundits are concerned, to go through and say that there's this concept of thought police.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna take the opposite side of the coin here.
All right.
And wax a little Orwellian, I guess, in that respect. Not that I agree with this whatsoever, but there is a notion out there that if we have any kind of say when it comes to the quality of our speech and what it is that we're putting out there, that we refrain from using certain racial epithets, that we insist on some level of respect, that somehow that evolves into some level of thought police, that we can't really go out and speak what it is that we want to say. People who back Donald Trump, for example, say, I like this guy because nobody seems to be able to control what it is that he's saying.
And they think because he seems uncensored,
right,
that he must be sincere. I wonder about that. I mean, just because a person says offensive things and seems uncensored, does that automatically mean that they're genuine in the comments they're making, or is it a shock jock tactic, simply to get press coverage?
Or is that just an indication of where the mentality of our constituents has gone to?
Well, I do think that, you know, you mentioned the thought police, you mentioned Orwell's Fear, 1984, the book that talks about newspeak, where you're not allowed under this totalitarian government in Orwell's book to say anything contrary to the established messages. And, you know, you're saying to me, well, I think your reaction to that is what?
Well, the Declaration of Independence, I think, has the best reaction to that. And that is, we hold these truths to be self-evident, meaning it should be obvious to you, if you can't figure it out at this point, that if we don't treat each other with respect in terms of dealing with our inalienable rights, decreed by whomever you might think that they're decreed by, that this falls into some aspect of thought police. First off, it's crazy to think that that we live in the United States of America and we have some type of administration who might be in somehow capable of exercising this type of fascist rule, because some idiot with a meme making machine goes through and puts something up on Facebook, and suddenly we're all screaming, "Oh my God, it's going to hell in a handbasket! And I'm going to take back this country we used to have." I just don't understand
there
that.
again, you have the fear mongering that certain news outlets.
But those are the voices that are getting heard, and that's what's becoming, I guess, most disgusting to me in this.
Well, okay, so really, we always come back, I think, at least I do, come back to this idea that we each need to be responsible for how we filter and how we digest what we consume in terms of media, and what we make, the meaning we make out of it. So it always comes back to this critical thinking that we're always talking about.
So when it comes to social media, though, that critical thinking extends to our critical click. When we click on anything, and regardless of the media we might be using, that's a vote for that. So, for example, if what's her name again? The county clerk.
Kim Davis.
I don't want to remember her name. But every time a story about Kim Davis comes up on our Facebook feed, and even though it might decry her as being some incredibly whacked out right-wing religious nut job, if we like the story because we happen to agree that she is some kind of whacked out religious...
When you say like, you mean actually click on it.
Click on it.
That's not a necessarily
not just a like, but we
but
actually click on the story to see the rest of the story. That's a vote for that story. That goes through and says, there must be some interest in this. And that vote
becomes... Give me more.
Exactly. It becomes a collective roll on to getting more stuff like that, instead of going through and voting for stories that might have a little bit more to do with what's happening within the fabric of this country and what the things that we really need to be concerned about, as opposed to somebody who's not holding their oath of office.
Well, so are you suggesting that we get the media we deserve, or that we ask for?
We do get the media we deserve, absolutely.
And along that same line, there's this also, you were talking about this metaphor of voting for certain media. My mom actually, and she's in her, 80s, she's a fairly conservative personality, et cetera, but she just said after the last presidential elections, not too long ago, she was saying, I'm not going to watch Fox anymore. She said all they do is, she didn't use the term fear-mongering, but she said, I don't like the way they present the points of view. And so she's actually, to a certain degree, boycotting that news outlet and registering, again, it's a vote, that she doesn't appreciate their style of marketing themselves.
Right.
So I do think, this idea of boycotting information that we feel like is really, it's dragging our culture down. It's creating a culture that we don't like.
Don't click.
Yeah, don't click on it, and don't watch it. Don't watch that station.
That's where your responsibility comes in. So here I'm going to go through then and give you a pitch about our Facebook page, facebook.com/TalkingPointLive. If you've got something to say you want to add to the conversation here, you're more than welcome to do so. Just go on to our Facebook page and make a comment, and we'll be glad to go through and get back to you on that. We have 2 minutes left.
We
here
do,
to wrap
and
things
can I
up.
put in a plug for DocuTah?
Oh, absolutely.
I have seen a couple of the films so far. Yesterday was the opening day here on campus. I saw a film called Selma, The Bridge to the Ballot, and it was an interesting look on the civil rights movement from the perspective of teachers and younger elementary, middle, and high school students who participated in the 63, 64, and 65 in the civil rights movement that led to the Voting Rights Act. So it was a different perspective you're used to seeing. Really well done. Then I saw one called Run Free about Micah True, also known as Caballo Blanco, who was an avid ultra-distance runner. So, take advantage of this media source that we have, documentary films here on campus this week, through the end of the week.
Through the end of Saturday, is that right?
Right,
As it goes?
through Saturday,
All right.
Yeah.
And tune in next week, Wednesday at 9 o'clock in the morning. Hopefully I'll be feeling a little bit better, have a little more energy to bring to the show here. We don't know what we're talking about, but hopefully it'll be something that perpetuates some interest. Thank you for joining us here on Talking Point Live. I am Eric Young.
And I'm Jennifer Kohler.
See you next week.